What if I told you I could show you a numbering pattern in the Bible that definitively proves that it's man-made, that it's very tightly structured from the Old Testament all the way up to the New Testament, that there's something in the background that shows me it's man-made. It's a repetitive numbering process that I can show you. My name is Dan Paulson. Welcome to the video. Okay, what I want to do is say that very briefly before getting into it, this is something that's always been a mystery to me in my life. When I was a child, I was raised up in a Christian home, but I didn't remain a Christian. But I do recall asking questions. I've heard people say before, I asked questions in school and they kicked me out, or in Sunday school, they kicked me out. They told me to shut up or something. That never happened to me. I did ask questions though, and they were things that I spotted. Like, it seemed like Jonah was 3 days in the whale. Jesus was 3 days in the tomb. I started looking at 3s, 7, 12s, and 40s. Range for 40 days, 40 nights, 40 years in the desert, 40 days in the wilderness. I would ask questions like, how come there's so many times 3, 7, 12, and 40 are used? I don't know if I framed it exactly like that, but those were the 4 numbers I saw all the time. And what I was told is that I was very clever, good job, you're paying attention. That's very wonderful. Good for you, Danny. But that's just how long it was. There's nothing to it. That's it. Good on you. Keep paying attention. But in my head, I was like, no, there's something there. And that's what this leads to, because there is something there. It's hard to see. They never saw it. Let's take a look at it. Now, what I'm going to point out to you, at first it might just seem like, yeah, that's a coincidence, but stick with me. You're going to see it so repetitive that you're going to go, okay, that is not a coincidence. I'm going to start right here in Genesis, and this is where I'm going to hit you with a 3-7. Do you see verse 7 right here? And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. 7, firmament is said 3 times right there. A big deal. Big deal, right? I'm going to go down here to chapter 2, verse 3. And God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because in it he had rested from all his work that God had created and made. We got a 3 and a 7 coupled together right here. Why is that? Why is in chapter 1, 7 up here have 3 times firmament? Okay, let's keep moving on. I'm going to go to chapter 3. And the eyes of them that were open, and they knew that they were naked. This is verse 7. This is in the entire book of Genesis. Now it says 8 there, but there's 2 different. All right, nakedness is 5 times for Noah after the flood. That means there's 3 that are just naked. So we've got 7 and 3 acknowledgement right there. Now let's keep moving on down here to number 4. Chapter 7, verse 7. Desire. You have to use the computer to do this. You wouldn't see this otherwise. Desire is said exactly 3 times. Desire or desired in Genesis. 7 and 3 right there. Okay. Let's move down to chapter 5. Okay, we're going to skip this one. This is a lineage, but I'm going to show you something. Do you see that 900? "900" is repeated 7 times. Do you see the 800? 800 is repeated 7 times. I'm going to jump over that. That's a special case. We'll get back to it. Okay, what I'm going to do actually is stop that. That's Genesis right here. Do you see that 7-3 in the beginning right there? I would look at those and go, those are the numbers I remember as a kid, the 7 and 3, and I'm seeing them right there. And it's kind of goofy because you would look at that and say, you know what, the Bible didn't originally have chapters and verses in it. Those were put in by Langton, 500, 600 years ago. A Catholic. Anyway. So what is he doing? If you look through, one thing you're going to notice is that he's got some stuff that looks like it's messed up. If you were breaking down chapters and verses, first of all, you wouldn't put day 7 from the first creation story into the second chapter. Those are 2 separate stories right there. Why did he do that? He did it purposefully to put that 3 and that 7 together. I'm going to contend that that's the case. He's trying to help us find this. He's pointing to it, actually. He's not trying to hide it. He's trying to expose it. Think about this. There was a time people had these stories memorized. They didn't read or didn't write. You would have access to that mental count if you worked it out in your head. Now today we just read it. We don't have access to that at that depth anymore. So what's he doing? He's trying to point it out. And you see what I'm doing? I'm using the computer to supplement, not knowing how many times it's there. But that also, you can prove it to yourself. Anybody can pull up the Bible, King James Version, do that. Start doing that. You'll find that this is there. You don't have to have me teach you or have somebody with a degree teach you. This is something we find for ourselves. In fact, people with degrees don't know this. All right, let's move on to other books of the Bible. I'm going to just show you quickly how this is there. All right, well, let's move right on to Exodus. And I'm going to point out something here. This is another one of those times you wonder, what is he doing as he's breaking up the chapters and verses? In this case, it's the verses. And here's what you would look at. Think if you were doing it. I'm breaking up the Bible into chapters and verses so that we can study them, so that I can write you a letter and tell you to look up chapter so-and-so, verse so-and-so, and we can talk about it. I mean, it's easier to find that way. It helps you identify things. So that was the purpose of him doing it. That's what we're told. But look at what he did. Here's a complete sentence. First verse. I would do that, wouldn't you? Then we have Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan, and Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. That is one sentence. He broke it into 3. Why did he do that? And all the souls that came out, well, let's get down here to number 7 and talk about something. Here's number 7, and here's abundant, where the land was. Let's look at abundant. There we have it. Let's look at the land was. The land was 3 times right there. So we've got our 7-3 being maintained. And why did he break it up? Why did he break it up like this then? Because he knew the concept was there, and he had to push that line right there into verse 7 so that 3 and 7 would align. If he made this 1 up here, this would be 5, that would be 2, that would be 3, that would be 4, this would be on 5. It wouldn't align. He added 2 lines in there to push this into that, I'm going to call it a matrix, because that's exactly what it is. Look at other numbers in there. I'll talk about those another time. I'm just showing you the tip of the iceberg. All right, this gets so big that it's going to take a while. I've been analyzing this for 7 years now. I'm just going to jump onto what these numbers are and move along. All right, we're going to get to Leviticus, verse 7. And the sons of Aaron. You don't even need to say Aaron. And the sons of is good enough right there. And the sons of 7 and 3. Order. Order. So in the entire book of Leviticus, order is very carefully repeated only 7 times. The story is structured to ensure that. Upon the fire. Upon the fire 3 times, 7-3. Okay, jumping on to, all right, Deuteronomy. We're going to come right down here to verse number 7. And what have we got here? Take your journey. Take your journey 3 times. Okay, so there's a 7-3 right there. I'm going to go down here where another occurrence is. Take your journey and look. What verse is it on? Number 40. 40 is one of my verses. I don't want to go there. That's getting deeper into the matrix. Let's stay shallow just to make sure that we see it there. Lebanon. Lebanon right there. 3 times. Okay, 7-3. Let's move on. All right, given how big it is, I'm not going to do every book. I need to try to shorten down the video, but I'll show you it's there. We get down here to, what did I pull up here? Jeremiah. 7, thou shalt speak. There you have it. 7-3, right there. And this isn't no longer in the Pentateuch. We've now launched into other Old Testament material. So what does that tell us? This is not a single author doing something. This is a school of proper structure for development of stories in the background. Yeah. Job is richly loaded. Look at this. We've got 7 sons and 3 daughters. A 7-3. That's on verse 2. On verse 3, we got 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels. Camels is repeated 3 times. Oxen repeated 3 times. I don't need to look into all that. Down here we get to 7, and we've got walking. Sure enough, 7-3. Job is loaded with man-made. Yeah. All right, Joshua. We come down to 7. What have I got? There's a number of them in here. We've got courageous is said 7 times. This one's pretty loaded, interestingly. I don't have to keep typing it out. That's good enough. Courageous. Courage and courageous. Repeated 7 times. Okay. We've got commanded thee. Commanded thee very specifically 3 times. And right hand. Also very specifically 3 times. 7-3. Joshua, any questions? Fluke? Accident? Coincidence? Not at this point. No. All right. What do we have next? Ezekiel. 7. Feet. Feet is repeated 3 times. Remember that first one in Genesis that was there? The firmament? On verse 3, on verse 7. Here we've got feet. And so we're seeing that same technique. Upon editing, I remembered where another one of those were. Here I've got the Gnostic Society Library, the Gospel of Thomas. If you look in here, you'll see that same verse technique. On number 7, Jesus said, "Blessed is the lion which becomes man when consumed by man, and cursed is the man whom the lion consumes, and the lion becomes man." So we've got our 7 and 3 happening here. I'll pull up Jeremiah. We get down here to number 7, and I'm going to find already, "Thou shalt speak." I've already identified that. Thou shalt speak 3 times. Jeremiah 7:3. These are hidden, but they're being pointed to. All right, we'll skip around a little bit more. We got Daniel here, King James Version. I'm going to go down to verse 3, and we're going to find out the eunuchs. There you go, 7 times. 3-7 acknowledgement is there. All right, what do we have in Samuel here in verse 7? We've got house of the Lord. Okay, 7-3. All right, Psalms, careful examination kind of reveals something a little bit different. In the first chapter, for example, there are only 6 verses. There is not a 7th one. However, it looks to me like the 3-7, 7-3, the 3 can have 7 in it, or 7 can have 3 in it. And what we have right here is planted. Planted indeed is repeated only. Planted, plantedst, something like along those lines. Throughout the entire book of Psalms, planted very carefully 7 times only in order to maintain this. Remember, I mentioned Jonah in the beginning, the 3 days in the belly of the whale being similar to Jesus' 3 days in the tomb. Okay, if I get down here to verse 7, what we have is every is repeated 3 times. It's a very short story. But moreover, we're going to see that same technique used where a word is repeated. Lots, lot. Lot is repeated exactly 3 times here. And you can kind of tell there's almost a sing-song way that it reads. "Come and let us cast lots that we may know for whose cause this evil is upon us." So they cast lots, and the lot fell upon Jonah. Lot is repeated very specifically there 3 times. We've got 7-3 held in 2 different ways right here in the book of Jonah. All right, I know I can make this video too long, and I have to be careful that I don't. This will just go on and on. I just want to really, in this video, emphasize that it's there. So let's make a huge jump from the Old Testament to the New Testament. Matthew, this is a different set of authors. Hundreds, 1,000, 1,500 years, perhaps in some cases later. Now, as you go through the book of Matthew, the first thing we're going to run into is a lineage. We're going to get down into chapter 2, and that is where the story of Jesus actually begins. Now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea in the days of Herod the king. Now, I recognize the story of Jesus as a monomyth. I'm not going to go there in this video. I'll leave a teaser, though, if you know the stories. The Buddha fasted and meditated under the Bodhi tree until he was ready, was tempted by Mara but resisted, gathered his monks, and traveled to teach. 500 years later, that motif reappears. Jesus fasted and prayed in the wilderness till ready, was tempted by Satan but resisted, gathered his disciples, and traveled to teach. That's for another video. What I'm going to do is come down here and say that in verse number 7, we've got diligently. There we have it 3 times. So right off the bat, first book of the New Testament, bingo. They're still using that same technique. What is that? Move on to Mark. This is the oldest of the Gospels. And what do we have here? The voice in verse 3. Actually, it's just voice. Not the voice. Voice. 3:7, so we've got it there. We've got a crying. I don't need to go through all those. So we have a 3:7 acknowledgement there, but this is so tight. Look, we get down to 7. There cometh one. There cometh one 3 times. So 7 and 3, book of Mark. Let's go to Luke. All right, I'm going to find that there's a couple of things repeating 3 times here, but let's just get down to 7 where we find it. 7 and 3, barren. 3 times only. Matthew, Mark, Luke. What about John? Let's make sure we're getting right to the work from the Romans themselves. All right, we've got John, and I can see that right here in verse 3. Look at, we've got without. Remember, this is how many times this word appears in the entire book. Without. 7 times. I can't leave a space after it. Yeah, okay, so we got a 3:7, and then 7. What do we have here? The same came. 3:7, 7:3 in John. Any question that the Romans are keeping it intensely tight? All right, Acts, number 3, Kingdom of God. Three 7. What if we get down to 7? Seasons? 3 times. 3:7, 7:3. Got to make sure we grab something from Paul here. Galatians. Get down to verse 3. What do we have? Grace. 7 times. Paul knows the pattern that was being used in Genesis. All right, for this video, I'm going to wrap up with Revelation because it's the end of the Bible, because I'm just going to keep unfolding very similar things here. I think there could be some variation, but you really have to look. Okay, Revelation. This is being built on a template. 3, blessed. 7 times. 3:7. Prophecy. 7. Let's get down to 7. I want to go to even so. 3 times. 3:7, 7:3. Why? Why? I know why. It's taken a long time to get into it, but I just wanted to hit those high points right there and try to, I haven't not looked at all of the books of the Bible. I do not have them all downloaded. I do have a few where I can't quite find what's working. There's some number patterns in there, but it's not quite the 3:7. There's something kind of similar. Let me show you one more thing before I go. This is this should be something that makes you go, wow. All right? I'm going to make a comparison in one area between the Babylonian creation epic, the Enuma Elish, and the called hero named Marduk, and Genesis, when God returns and calls Noah. I want to show you something really quick. All right, again, what I'm about to show you is just the tip of the iceberg, but it's going to show you how much of Judaism came from the Babylonians. In Genesis, let's take a look at Noah's name. All right, his name is repeated exactly 41 times, and there's a reason for that. What happens if we go look at the Babylonian creation epic, the Enuma Elish? The counterpart to Noah is Marduk. Marduk, of course, was before Noah. I've got it up here, Marduk. Marduk's name is repeated 41 times in the Enuma Elish. Later on, Noah's name is repeated exactly 41 times in Genesis. There are other recurring motifs. We will see in the Babylonian creation epic, as things begin to go bad, the god is gone. Apsu, the creator god, is gone and doesn't return till the called hero. When we get to Genesis, same thing. Cain leaves the presence of the Lord. Chapter 4, everything goes bad. God's not around until it's time to return and call Noah. There's motifs that are reoccurring in the background that should tell us a bigger picture once we analyze them. But in this video, I just wanted to show that numbering pattern and let you know that I have not analyzed it all. I've got a good idea what's happening. There's a template in there, a human life template, but they're obscuring it with a numbering pattern as well. Here, let me show you how big it gets. This is some of my research right here. I've got a number analog count. See that 3-7? That 3-7 grid there, right there. That's where I'm starting from. I'm going to go and gather up these numbers. Do you see that in this number group right here in green, I've got a 3, the 7, the 12, and the 40. Those were the numbers I was seeing as a kid. However, there's a lot of other numbers that were in there that I wasn't seeing. There are patterns in there. Now, if we look, those 22 numbers are repeated over 6,052 times in the Bible. 6,052. It's a repeating sequence. It's just so big, we don't quite wrap our brains around it. What I've done in this video is just barely the tip of the iceberg, but I know that the videos get too long and people are like, I don't get what he's talking about. This is not, however, theism or atheism. So when a theist says, you know what you're seeing isn't there? Yeah, well, I'll tell you what I'm seeing you can't see. And when the atheist tells me there's nothing there, same answer. You can't see it either. There's something that neither one of you guys sees, the atheist or the theist. But it demonstrates to me that the Bible is structured by man, and it's being held in a pattern, a sequential pattern, that helps it connect with the psyche of an individual, because it is a psychological pattern. That gets so deep, I'm just going to let it go on this video. I'm going to have to end this just so that it doesn't get too long. Questions, comments, I'd love to hear them. Thanks. See you in the next video. You know, I feel very compelled to leave a talking point. This is a Susanna. What this is an apocryphal text. It's not in the Bible, but I want to show you something. If we go to verse 3, daughter. 7 times it's repeated in the book here. Let's get down to 7, and what do we have there? Husband. 3 times. And look at this walk. This is curious. Where did we just see that in Job? Walking in verse 7. Oh, there's walking right there in 8. Anyway, all right. Well, okay. What I wanted to talk about then is this. If that numbering pattern is there in Babylonian material, if it's there in Jewish material, and we'd have to dig more into the Babylonian material, the video would get bigger. It's there in a more coarse form. It became refined in Genesis in 4 locations that I just call them analog farms. They're those lineages where all those groups of numbers are gathered up. It's like a chunk of code in 4 places. There's 2 lineages, and there's a numbering pattern around Sodom and Gomorrah, 50, 50, 50, 50, 40, 40, 40, 5, 5, 5, 30, 30, 20, 20, 10, 10, you know, this whole sing-song thing. And then if you look at righteous, 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 at some point you start looking at that and go, righteous is said 7 times right there. They're repeating it 7 times to make it a surrogate to grab those other numbers. They're patterning things in there that if you look at them and then gather up, that's where you gather those repeating numbers. And those are the ones that repeat 6,000 plus times in the Bible. It's like, damn it, there's something there, isn't there? But then you look at it and go, it's bigger than the Bible. It was greater knowledge at some point in time. It covered into other areas. It wasn't just in the Bible. It's in other works that are not authorized to be in the Bible, which means that the knowledge is bigger than behind the scenes of whoever wrote the Bible. They're just using it. Does that make sense? It's almost as if okay, if we're making Gnostic material on that pattern, It's getting out of hand. We've got to shut that down. We don't want that to be authorized material out there. But if you look and you see those patterns, you realize whoever was authoring these books were like they were from some sort of a school. There's a pattern, there's a sequence, you built them this way. That 3-7, like I said, it's just the beginning. It's going to go 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The chapters are stages along the way. 7 in the beginning. Wow, that's a pure state to start with. What chapter is the flood on? Chapter 7. It's going to get so big that you go, oh my gosh, I never saw that. The number patterns are right in our face, but we don't look at the numbers. We look at the stories. I step back and go, what about these numbers? What is it to have it rain for 40 days and 40 nights, or to be 40 years in the desert, or to be 40 years in the wilderness? Oops, I meant 40 days. They're all devoid places for the length of 40, but 40 is an analogous term which goes back to 7. It's going to be some weird, convoluted thing that takes a while to wrap your brain around. It's very old code, but the stories are an inner path. Anyway, okay, that's where it gets a little off the deep end, and people go, I don't follow you anymore. I don't see what's going on. So you have to kind of be able to wrap your own brain around it. Are you the kind of person that hears that fig story in Jesus and go, why didn't he just have it become heavily laden with figs? Then you got the kind of brain that can do this. You're the one that sees problems in the stories, but reasons through that there's something about the story nonetheless that there's teaching elements in there somehow. They're not fables, but they're like parables and other teachings. Proverbs. But then there's more than that. There's mythical elements that are held in a religious genre, but there's nevertheless on a pattern of the way a human goes about. So people connect with these in some hidden way. You know what? The template was used to create the first 3 Star Wars movies, the first trilogy. Lucas used a template that was created by a man named Joseph Campbell in a book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And that everybody connected, and that the first 3 were great, but they were made on that template. What happens afterwards? They just become like Cowboy Adventures in Space or something like that. They're like, oh, okay, well, the effects were cool and all that kind of stuff, but you don't connect with it the same way. You don't feel like you're a part of it the same way. Suddenly you're watching it from a distance instead of being a part of it. That's why the template is so effective when you make stories on it, because people somehow in the background feel like they're emotionally connected with it without knowing why. Humans are easy to pen, to manipulate. Most of them, the masses. Anyway, all right. Talking point ends. It's bigger than we know. Somebody's in the background keeping it from us. But all the hints are there for us to get access to it nonetheless. Using the computer and some reasoning skills, we can find our way into, I guess, behind the curtain from antiquity. All right. Hope it was interesting. See you in the next video.